Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of The Comic Source. I'm your host, Chase, along with Blake Whitlow, who's created the amazing Spawn reading order that we're using to go through Spawn. If you want more details, go back and listen to the episode yesterday. I dropped it all like I usually do, explaining how this got started. All that being said, we're going to go ahead and dive into the issue for this episode. It's issue number 59 of the regular series of Spawn. So let me go ahead and share my screen so you can check it out. And you see there by the cover that this issue all about Cyan. She's got some chains around her. Does that mean Spawn has her? She's crying. Ooh, yeah, enough to break your heart. Quick recap as we check inside the front cover. Credits, Todd McFarlane, story, Capullo on the pencils. McFarlane, Chance Wolf is listed ahead of Danny Mickey now, but Mickey's still there. On inks, Tom Orzechowski, copy editor and letters, and then Haberlin and Kemp on colors as usual. The 58 summary that we talked about yesterday, Eddie and Andy, the two abused kids that Spawn saved way back in issue number 29 from their father, found their way to New York, wanted to stay with Spawn. That wasn't a great idea. He got mixed up with a drug dealer, eventually killed the drug dealer accidentally. And the last sentence there, Eddie and Andy are forever stripped of their innocence. So, yeah, pretty rough and emotional issue last time. So, diving into this one, a little poetic license with the art here from McFarlane, Capullo rather. We've talked about it before. Like their house is in a neighborhood, but every once in a while, you can see that top middle panel there. Capullo, I keep saying McFarlane. Capullo draws it like it's some isolated cabin out in the woods, but we're talked about how we each reap what we sow, and about balance and self-determining fate and karma, basically, as we zoom in on Cyan as she's sleeping in her crib. And based on the word balloon, the bottom of that 9-panel grid, which says "Sleep tight, Angel," it's pretty clear that Spawn visits Cyan from time to time just to look in on her and make sure that she's safe and sleeping and secure. The other thing that McFarlane talks about through these pages is the idea of what it is that guides us as we're trying to live our lives and fulfill our destinies. And he talks about guilt, which is definitely something that Al Simmons feels, and I would go so far as to say he wallows in it at times. He takes the blame for things that he probably shouldn't. And you would think that based on the amount of guilt he carries around, first of all, two things: he must be Catholic. Second, he would make better choices because you don't want future things to feel guilty about, but yet he does. So anyway, he does visit with Terry as long as he's there as well. Actually frightens Terry, as Terry's hasn't been sleeping well, gets up in the middle of the night to get a drink of OJ, and Al startles him. He's like, "What are you doing here?" "Hey, I'm delivering a message. I'm getting restless. I'm tired of sitting around waiting for you to tell me when we can make a move on Wynn. We need to do something." And Terry's like, "I'm working on it. I'm trying to find proof." And Spawn's like, "Not fast enough, man. Like, this Forsberg isn't giving us the information you thought you would need, and like, honestly, I'm tired of babysitting him. The longer I sit around and just let things happen, the more innocent people get hurt. At least that's been Al's experience to this point." And he even says, "Yeah, I recently ran into a couple of kids I know. One of them now has a bullet hole in his arm, and the other's a murderer." So again, it's kind of stretching it. I don't really think that Eddie murdered that guy, but again, Al's got to kind of wallow in this existence and sort of self-pity. So
I think that's just Al's mentality of it, because he's a killer. He kills people all the time. That was his job. And he's killed quite a few people since then. He literally has a throne of dead bodies. So I think what he deems as murder is kind of up in the air. Like,
yeah,
he's not the most reliable source on what is and isn't distinguishes murder. Maybe to him, everything is murder. Doesn't matter what the reason is or anything. Like, it led to someone dying. That's murder to him.
Yeah, it's he definitely has a skewed perspective, and that's no more clear than when his response to Terry's question. Terry's like, well, what do you want me to do? It's like, do anything, speed up this detox of Forsberg. Like, I'm tired of living this nightmare while you're sleeping with my wife. Like, it's like, damn.
He still won't let go of
Yeah,
that.
he won't let go. Dude, she's not your wife. You were dead for 5 years. She's not your wife. But again, yeah, he can't let go. And Terry kind of yells back, like, back off, man. I'm pushing this as hard as I can. You've got to be more patient. So yeah, not the best situation. Of course, the ruckus attracts Wanda, and right as she turns on the light, Al teleports away, and Terry goes to work the next day, and he's thinking, yeah, he really needs to find whatever it is he needs to find so they can take the next step and take out Wynn. So Wanda and Cyan spend the day together. We get a couple of pages here, or at least one page anyway, of their kind of their day, and just told about how much Wanda appreciates her child and loves spending time with her and whatnot. While on the flip side, we get Al's perspective, and the guilt, back to the idea of guilt, the guilt that he was never able to give Wanda a child, and how he's tortured by that fact, and that's part of why he threw himself into his job and became the killing machine that he was for Wynn, because he was, in a way, he was punishing himself for not being able to give Wanda what she wanted. So yeah, even before Al Simmons was a hellspawn, in a way he lived somewhat of a tortured existence in a lot of ways. And for that reason, when he died, we're told that Wanda thought, well, at least now that he's dead, his soul can finally rest in peace, and that's what she hoped for. So obviously, she didn't get her wish. Those prayers were definitely not answered. So Spawn's finally tired of sitting around waiting for Forsberg to get the answers and that he's seeking, and so he gives Forsberg an ultimatum. Again, Forsberg not all there, still traumatized by the torture and starvation and all the trauma that he's been through. But Spawn does give him a deadline, like, hey, I'm leaving. You got 3 hours to come back to your senses and tell me what I need to know. You and I are a lot alike. We're two of just thousands of innocent people who Jason Wynn has affected and ruined their lives. So, get your shit together and tell me what I need to know. And you kind of, like, I get that Al's impatient, but this dude's not all there, man. Like, I don't know why you think giving him a deadline is going to do any good.
Like, he's under huge amounts of mental duress. What Al doesn't seem to understand is, like, when people go through traumatic experiences like this, they relive that pain every single day. So to everyone else, it's like, dude, it's been like 5 years. Get over it already. But for the person who's affected, it's every single day. And that's what Forsberg is going through. He lost his family and he's tortured. Al has enough decency to recognize that they're both affected. We were talking a few episodes ago when Forsberg was first introduced that they are very similar and almost paralleled in some regards, because they were tools that Jason used to achieve his own ends. And Al's acknowledging that here, but he's so self-centered. He's like over years of mental torture and drama in 3 hours, or else. It's like, yeah, sure, that's really going to make him relax, Al.
Yeah, it's really, really not. So as Al heads off to do whatever it is he's going to do, the scene turns to Jason Wynn, and Terry, he just hasn't learned his lesson. Like, you've been searching for information on Jason Wynn. Now previously that your search for information on Jason Wynn is part of, along with Al stealing a bunch of weapons that you knew where they were, got Wynn's attention and had him framing you and trying to kill you and your family. So now you've gone into Jason Wynn's department. You've got a promotion into his department, so you can try to get close to him so you can find even more information. But you're still not covering your tracks, dude, because it's been found out. Like, they've basically cross-referenced all the warehouses, all the places where they've had issues with their weapons being destroyed or being found, or just whatever problems they've had. and they're cross-referencing it with files that Terry Fitzgerald has used his top secret access to gain knowledge of. He's accessed these files, and these files match up with where they've had problems in the world. Like, you could not have a bigger smoking gun. And so, Wynn says, well, I guess we just found our leak and the reason for all of these coincidental disasters. So Terry's right back under the hot seat. He is really not a good secret agent guy. Like, he's just not. And maybe that's why he was always, in more of the translation side of things, or analyst side of things, rather than an actual operative. So
paper pusher, like he wasn't cut out for this kind of stuff.
He's terrible at covering his tracks. So meanwhile, Cyan and Wanda are continuing to enjoy their day. Cyan's coloring, the phone rings, Wanda goes to answer it, nobody's there. When she goes back into the other room where Cyan is, Cyan's not there. So she checks all her usual hiding places, and to her dismay, she cannot find her anywhere. And then when she goes to look in her room, she sees a shadowy figure with a red cape grab Cyan and then disappear as Wanda passes out. So she immediately calls the cops and says, hey, this guy Spawn, again known to the police, has kidnapped Cyan. I mean, what is she's supposed to think? And interspersed in there, we see apparently where Al went was to get his weapons. He's tired of waiting to take out Wynn. He's given Forsberg the deadline. He's going to go arm up. He's going to go back, get the information he needs from Forsberg, whatever that is, and finally take out Wynn, apparently. So meanwhile, Terry comes home from work, finds out, obviously Wanda had called him, and she tells him that Spawn's the one that appeared to be there and take Cyan. Terry's obviously shocked because he knows that Spawn is actually Al Simmons, Wanda's ex-husband. Why would Al take Cyan unless it's out of jealousy? And Wanda, after the police finally leave, Wanda kind of berates Terry, saying, I know there's something going on. I know there's something you're hiding from me about Spawn and yourself. Like, what is it? Terry's not about to tell her, right? What can he say? Your ex-husband is alive, and I think maybe he's jealous of our relationship, so he took Cyan. Like, yeah, that's not, I can't blame Terry for not coming clean, although he might have been better off had he done it. So meanwhile, Terry, who's been to Rat City several times, has drawn the police a map so they can go and crack down in the alleys and try to find Cyan and get her back. So that's exactly what they do, and they don't even bother to ask any questions of the homeless. They've been around the block. These guys know that these homeless cover for each other. They have each other's backs, and so they pretty much just head right to the center of Rat City. And of course, what they find there is pretty shocking. All the dead bodies, all the rotting corpses being chewed on by rats and cockroaches and worms, and Cygor's body. Like, this is pretty horrific. And Al, who had just been about to return to the alley, is watching this from above and is thinking of this as a declaration of war. So does that mean Spawn's going to start shooting, and I'll put this in quotes, innocent police officers? Because we know Wynn has plenty of police on his payroll that are crooked. So who knows how many of these guys are actually, double dipping, working for NYPD and working for Jason Wynn. But we'll have to wait for next issue to see how that plays out, because we find out who really was behind the abduction of Cyan as we turn to the next page. There's Cyan coloring. There's Violator in his clown form. And he has kidnapped Cyan just to drive a wedge between Terry Fitzgerald and Spawn and Wanda. Don't know if he realized that they were working together, or if, there was some sort of rekindled friendship that could possibly threaten what he and Malbolgia would like to see, what Jason Wynn wants. And it's kind of interesting because it wasn't so long ago that the Violator was saying, hey, I can't help you, Wynn. You got to do it yourself. You got to take out Spawn on your own, so that Malbolgia will realize that humans don't make good hellspawn. They don't make good officers in my army. But now, I don't know, maybe much like Spawn, who's grown impatient, maybe Violator grew impatient and he's decided to stir the pot a little bit by kidnapping Cyan. So yeah, it appears to have worked, because Terry and Wanda are convinced that it was Spawn that took Cyan. So poor little Cyan, she's done nothing and never hurt anybody, but yeah, kidnapped by this grotesque creature from hell. Pretty bad place to be, I'd say.
Yeah. Yeah, we saw, I think, all the way back in like issue 50. It was either 50 or 54. Violator has apparently been planning to do this quite some time. He was the clown at Cyan's birthday.
Yeah.
So he's been hanging around the Fitzgeralds for some time. So I don't know if he's doing this to get back at Spawn. His motivations are unclear, and that is a consistent thing surrounding Clown. You never know what he's going to do next or why. He's very much a creature of chaos. Whatever idea he has, that's the best possible idea for him. And
at that moment.
Yeah. And he's just a cruel, unusual little creature.
Yeah, and interesting to follow up the last issue with the two boys who'd suffered physical abuse at the hands of their father, who showed back up, 25, 30 issues later, to follow that up with a kidnapping of a 2-year-old little girl. Pretty rough, pretty couple rough issues for kids in the Spawn universe. The other big thing here, like we mentioned, is Jason Wynn now knowing that Terry Fitzgerald is on to him, so to speak. Is the leak has been causing him all these problems. We saw last issue with the 3 talking heads mentioning the continuing foreign policy failures of this president, the pressures on Wynn to resolve these issues. So yeah, it's Terry Fitzgerald's in a really bad place again all of a sudden, because he doesn't know how to cover his tracks. So yeah, it might be time to really pull the trigger for Terry and Al to really pull the trigger. And so it's almost the worst possible time in terms of what's good for Terry and Al, and the best possible time in terms of what's best for Jason Wynn and the Violator, for Cyan to have gone missing, for Cyan to be kidnapped.
Yeah, they're in total disarray right now, because there's potential for some coordination between Jason and Clown. We know that they've been talking. We know that they've been dealing with each other. So perhaps after Jason found out that Terry was involved with all this, maybe he had a talk with Clown like, hey, take the Fitzgerald girl.
Yeah, definitely. And will Al go to war with the police? That's a whole nother can of worms. So again, great art, a lot of emotion in this story. I did wish we'd gotten a little bit, like maybe a line or two about Cygor, because I don't want to let that die, knowing who Cygor is. And we got that bombshell dropped when Cygor and Spawn fought in that issue, that it's somebody that Al knew. Somebody who was actually investigating Al's death knew that he didn't die in the line of duty like it was reported, and that's just been left for the past 2-3 issues. So anxious to have that, to get back to that storyline. But
this is not the last we've seen of him. In fact, there is a mini series coming up soon.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So look forward to that.
Yep, definitely. All right, I guess that does it for this issue. Anything else to add, Blake?
No, just the art is really amazing. I love the shot when we see Wanda and Cyan coloring. You get that nice close-up on the red crayon.
Yep.
And then later on, you get another identical shot. Starts in zoomed in on the crayon, but now it's green and she's with Violator. Just those repetition shots I absolutely love.
Yeah, I really like the shot of Al all decked out when he decides to put on the bandoliers with the grenades and the bullets and the giant weapons. It's always that juxtaposition of Spawn, who's such a fantasy character with the spikes and the chains and the cape, and then you throw some cool hardware on them like that. That always works really well for me. And I also thought that the page with Cyan and Wanda having their day together at the movies, at what looks to be fast food, at the grocery store, really selling that idea of kind of what an idyllic life they have, juxtaposed on the next page where there's Spawn hanging out in his domain where there's worms, there's bats, there's spiders, there's rats, there's a nearly naked crazy man and the corpse of a cybernetic gorilla behind Spawn. Like, couldn't be two different lives if you planned it out. So
yeah, they absolutely do a great job in those juxtaposing shots. Like it's definitely intentional that they put such an idyllic, scene of domestic life, something that so many people can relate to. Just throw a very macabre, horrifying scene immediately next to it just to show where our title character is and the life that he could have had.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, it goes back to that comment that I loved where Al says to Terry, let's get a move on. I'm supposed to just wait around while you keep sleeping with my wife. Like, it's just brutal. So anyway, that's going to do it for this episode, everybody. We appreciate the support and for joining as always. And we'll talk to you next time.
Bye.